Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, it's Joanna Hunter here for another episode of Into the LightWeb podcast, and today joining me is Alex Hargrove on my $1 Million Lab series, and we're going to hear all about Alex's life, his amazing business that he has built, and he also has some amazing stories from how to become a straight A student when you're not really quote-unquote academic. So I'm going to hand it over to Alex. How are you, Alex? A warm welcome.
Hello, Joanna. Thanks for having me on.
Come and introduce yourself a little bit to our people who might not know who you are yet or what you do in the world.
Sure. My name is Alex Hargrove. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of NetLaw. You can visit us at netlaw.com, a company I started with my father nearly a decade ago now, after graduating law school in 2011 from Washington and Lee. We've raised $13 million for that company. Done over $10 million in revenue, have done a lot of estate plans for people. We do online estate planning. We began after winning an American Bar Association award for best online delivery of legal services back in 2012. We won that with myself and a guy in Croatia named Zlatko Pazinin, who has now worked with me for a decade, that I found on a freelance board. And the two of us now have multiple patents together. Like I said, have been working together for a decade and have created some pretty great technology in this space. The early product we created was an online law firm at my father's firm. He left a big white shoe job sort of at the pinnacle of his career to go all in on this idea we kicked around while I was in law school. And right around when I graduated, he said, I'm going to do it. He quit his big paying job and went in with a bunch of people that knew estate planning but did not know technology. So I came in right out of law school and realized law was not really my thing. I got good at it, but I didn't want to bill clients by the hour. I was more interested in figuring out more efficient ways to do what the client needed done. So I quickly found myself on the technology side of the legal tech equation, built our first product along with Zlatko. That's what we won the award for, leveraged that to raise our first $1 million for a non-lawyer company called NetLaw. And for the past decade, we've marketed, or 9 years, we've marketed do-it-yourself estate plans. Get your will done, get your living trust. And they're really high quality documents. I coded them all myself initially in these really long bursts, and they all came from my father's document management system. So he had, 30 years of wealthy clients that he had done estate planning for. And even the wealthiest, Bill Gates still has a will. His will says, I leave everything to this trust, and then this trust goes out to other trusts. But at the core, there's still a will. There's still a healthcare surrogate that says who can make healthcare decisions. There's still a power of attorney, and there's probably lots of those. But all those sorts of documents, and they covered every possible situation because he'd done this for 30 years. So I worked with one of these NYU tax guys that was real smart that worked with him, and he would say, use this language for this and this language for this, and just kept going until we'd covered lots and lots of situations. So we've had a really high quality estate planning product. But what we're going to be launching in the fall is actually combining lawyers. He's continued to build a law firm over the past decade, while I have really focused on the technology side, and we're going to unite those efforts, and that's all under progress, or in progress right now, because we think people ultimately need to talk to a lawyer at the end of the process.
Yeah, it's interesting, and the thing is, so many of us don't think about making contingencies for in the event of our deaths. Where a lot of us, it isn't until we get maybe into our 50s and our 60s we start to think these things. But it is such a smart thing to have that in place at a much younger age than waiting until the first health problem shows up or something, that kind of starts it. But obviously, when we engage a lawyer, it can be so expensive, and so presumably to do it DIY, it's there's a saving there to the person who's engaging in that, and then also as well to know that they could get the kind of the blessing of an attorney to know that they've done it right. That's a great combination, I feel.
It is. There's a really large underserved population. Like 80% of the U.S. population will not see an attorney on an occasion when they should. And what you have is at the top of the spectrum, you have the lawyers making 160 their first year out of law school, 250 after that in the big markets. And people think that's what lawyers make. And a lot of people, myself included, go to law school, slightly naive in terms of what the career prospects, especially after 2008, are going to be. But what ends up happening is you have this little triangle at the top, and then you have this massive hump down at the bottom, and the bottom's not 100,000. If you're a good lawyer, you're not making 100,000. If you're a decent lawyer, you're not making 100. You're making 40 working for government, nonprofit, special interest groups, or you're with a big firm. Maybe you're in a mid-market, but still there's not like the median. This is one of those cases where the median's really skewed, because if you look at the median income of a lawyer, it's like $110,000. I could live with that. I don't need to make the big city money. Well, you're not going to be making $110,000. You're going to be making a lot more than that if you're one of the small group. So there are a lot of people that know how to help people with legal matters that aren't getting connected to the massive number of people that aren't getting served. So ultimately, I want to find a way we've been working to find a way to take a market saturated with lawyers and a consumer market that needs greater access to legal services. And we're starting with estate planning, but there's certainly nothing that's keeping us from limiting ourselves there once we've, I think, really got the secret sauce right, if you will.
Yeah. I spoke to a lawyer I had her on an interview that I was on her podcast, but it turns out that what she does is she just does traffic law, and she's in the UK, but she just did traffic law, and it was really cool because obviously, a lot of the letters that go out are the same and things like that. So she had able to really kind of put a lot of that online, which was really great, and make it a lot more accessible to people and stuff like that. And it was a really cool, because it was just, that was all she did was traffic law. That was it. You parked your car in the wrong place, she was your lady, and it was so good. And it's interesting, and I love this that you're focusing on the state, because I think this is really important. And there is nothing, I think, as traumatizing as perhaps losing a parent and then the argument over the state. I've
particularly
had several...
if guardianship. Sorry to interrupt. If guardianship is involved, I tell people that don't think estate planning is that interesting. That you've got 76% of people with children under 18 that don't have an up-to-date will. Majority of them don't even have a will at all. And a will is going to do a basic job of naming a guardian. So if something happens to you both in a plane, whatever. It can be nasty when you have competing grandmothers and other interested relatives that have a court battle over who takes care of the kids. And that's something really easy to solve. And in fact, on that theory, we partnered with SoFi, which you may have heard, a digital bank here in the United States, and Ladder Life Insurance last year to offer a free will. And it's a basic will, but it's really presented, it's the same quality as all our other documents, but it's really presented as a way you can, at the free level, you can take care of guardianship and make sure an uncle you've never heard of doesn't inherit your property. Make that go to the charity that you want it to go to, or especially in the case of SoFi with a lot of younger people, there's a lot of interest in leaving property to charity, or actually even taking care of pets. So we've got pet trust, believe it or not, so you can make sure Fido's provided for.
Oh, I love that. So tell us a little bit about your journey, because when you were in school, you weren't really like 100% academic, it wasn't like it was totally your jam. So tell us your school journey, because we had a little chat before the podcast started, and I really loved hearing that, because I think there's so many people who are in the same shoes. I know I was in school. I know that there's many entrepreneurs that follow this path.
Yeah. So my backstory, I graduated high school with a 2.2 GPA. I was the guy in the back goofing off. just bored as hell. And I went to a very conservative private school, small, kind of almost more like a church school than what you'd think of a fancy private school. And it was, it was very claustrophobic growing up in that environment for somebody like myself, who's really interested in the world of ideas and didn't discover it until college. It was in college that I would sit in the back and be reading books and ignoring the professor and occasionally arguing with her. And she realized this guy somehow knows what he's talking about when he argues with me, even though he doesn't pay attention, and in doing that great in the class. So I met with her on a few occasions, and she just happened to study gifted underachievement in gifted college students. And she looked at my background. It's like, guy's got IQ here, but his success level is like nil. And he's about to drop out of college, and she pulled some strings and got me into an honors program. And what that meant for me was now I'm with all the students that made a 4.0 in the really small classes, with the graduate level professors who actually care about the students. Because I'm at a big state school. You go from being in large classes where they think everybody's just, screw ups, to now they're like, oh, you're the honor student. So I got the benefit of the doubt for the first time in my life. I sat on the front row. I watched YouTube videos instead of reading textbooks. Textbooks don't work well with me, but I found if I watched a YouTube video, I could just automatically remembered all the relevant points. I didn't have to take notes, and I'd sit on the front of the class and argue with the professors in a very mannerly way, let's say. In a way they generally appreciated and responded well to, but it kept me back and forth, and it kept me interested, and ultimately allowed me to make straight A's from that point forward, and get over $1 million in scholarships to law school, to different law schools, not at one law school. I applied to a lot of them.
That's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. Because I think so many people, I mean, one of the things that I see especially in all of the 7-figure entrepreneurs that I've interviewed for this series, is so many of us are not really quote unquote academic. We are way, it's much more about problem solving. It's much more about, we see a need in the world and we think, how can we fill that? How can we sort that out? How can we, rather than instead of, really nosing a book all the time, there's plenty of us that like reading, and I know I liked reading and things like that. But it's always about innovation and ideas. And I think that's what it is that natural entrepreneurs are ideas people. And for me, entrepreneurship meant I didn't need to conform.
And there's a lot of people like that out there. And I was very passionate about this in a former life, but really before I went in law school and went a different direction with my research, at least. But about 1 out of 2 gifted children in at least one data set I recall. This is not recent data I've looked at, but back when I was researching this for a book I ultimately wrote after college, trying to tell parents of gifted children who were, failing out of classes, here's a plan. Here's how I did it. I don't know if it's going to work for everyone, but here are the things I did that took me from there to now figuring out how to play the academic game. And it's a game, and people like us, we can learn to play a game if we figure out the rules and we figure out ways that work for us in playing that. So a large number of our brightest people are dropping out and ending up never getting to use their potential, which is to the detriment of all of us, of course. And I had this belief that if I could help just a small group of those people find what I've found, I mean, imagine the creative force you could unleash.
I love that. And I mean, if we look at some of the most innovative people, like Steve Jobs, for instance, he didn't complete university. Bill Gates didn't complete university. So many of them have not completed, what we would quote as the standard for someone who's smart. You go to university, you finished, right? And I love that you call it a game, because that is, I think a lot of entrepreneurs see things as games. And we learn the rules of the game, but then we learn the rules of the game and we learn them so well so that we can learn how to break them in a way that we can still stay within the rules, but we kind of invent a few of our own rules. And I think this is part of the innovation of being able to innovate on other people's ideas, being able to innovate in society, to be able to look at even, you know, the way that you have looked at law in a way is innovative. It's, you know, it's seeing, well, look at all these people that don't get a lawyer, right? That
Mm-hmm.
could really do with a lawyer, probably save them thousands of dollars, lots of trauma, lots of
Mm-hmm.
angst. And then look at all these lawyers that really are not making that much. And how can we create something that, you know, benefits both? And I love that, because that's what the innovation is all about. It's about looking at the puzzle pieces and seeing them in a different light.
And what's really excited me about the problem that I've spent the last decade trying to solve with estate planning is no one's successfully done it. LegalZoom has spent hundreds of millions or billions on advertisements, direct to consumer, DIY product. We've done no direct to consumer advertising. And they've serviced, you know, over 2 million, I think, or 1.5 million wills that they've created, which is way more than us. But of the 200 million people that need an updated will, it's not even put a dent. You're talking less than 1%. So I don't know that we'll be the ones to solve it. I think we will. But if you figure out a process that's very low friction that I can do from my couch, that's going to give me the assurance I'd get if I went down the street and hired an expensive lawyer, but the convenience of sitting here on the couch. You let me execute it online too, so I don't end up with it sitting in the printer, never getting signed and witnessed and notarized, which are hurdles. You're going to not just do 2 million wills, you're going to do tens of millions of wills. And for me, it's you know, years ago, we've struggled over the years. It's not easy. Especially as a bootstrap startup. You know, we didn't have the rocket fuel of venture capital behind us, so which some of our competitors do have. But you know, in the struggle, I just kept seeing nobody is making a meaningful dent on this, and I see a way it could be done better. And I know if I just slow down and every day with my team, we just stay focused on that way it could be done better, we'll have a shot at it. Somebody's going to do it. Why not us, right?
I love that. I love that. It's one of the sayings that we have inside the $1 million experiment community. If me, why? If them, why not me?
Yep.
You know, and I think
Yep.
it's such a powerful thing to reframe, because, you know, there's always going to be someone that succeeds. Why not you? Right?
Yep.
It's the law of the land that someone is always going to succeed. Why can't it be you? Why can't it be us that hits the seven figures or create success in a niche that hasn't been done really before or done well before? So take us through the journey, because you come out of law school, you decide maybe the lawyer thing is cool, but it's not really. So the tech starts appealing to you.
Mm-hmm.
When you start building this company, you're building it bootstrapped from scratch, startup. How take us through that first sort of year and stuff of growing the business.
So we had some momentum at the start because my father was a very well-known estate planning attorney in the region, in the Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio region. I'm actually in Florida, but the company's headquarters are in Kentucky. So when I came in, there was a PowerPoint they'd spent $20,000 on that showed what this online portal might look like. And I said, you guys are just going around in circles. I saw an opportunity to do something different. I saw something that could possibly be big. I knew my father had the credibility right now to sort of serve as a mini launch pad if I could get something going. And I love the idea of solving this problem. So I said, in 2 days, I will deliver you what you've only got a PowerPoint for right now. And I had no idea which is going to be a completely branching logic online form. It wouldn't be connected, I said, to documents yet. It would just be the interview, and it would spit out a data file that had the question and the answer. But it'd be dynamic, and it would ask everything you as the attorney would ask to create their basic estate plan. So I didn't sleep for 2 days. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew there were like form tools out there you could drag and drop some, and sure enough, found a form stack or something like that. Woofu, I think, was the shout out. Woofu was the name of the original one I created it with. I delivered it in the 2 days, and my deal was I want to work from home if I do this, and I need one person as an assistant, and I don't want to bill hours anymore. So I hit the goal. I got my assistant, and I didn't have to bill hours anymore. Eventually hired a back-end developer. I do JavaScript and some front-end stuff, but I was not a server-side code guy. I didn't have formal training in that. I taught myself stuff on the weekends. And he's now Zlatko, one of my best friends. We've worked together for 10 years, which is, unusual when you go look for somebody in another country to do a small development project and turn that into a lifelong relationship. But that's actually an interesting story. Maybe I'll put a pin in that and come back to it. So we won an American Bar Association award with what Zlatko and I created. I coded the legal documents so that now when you go through the interview, legal documents are created at the end. The clients would go through, and they were actually clients because this is a law firm at the time. Clients would go through, they'd pick a plan, they'd get a recommendation, they'd fill out this long form that would, branch out. So you're not going to be asked your spouse's name if you're not married, stuff like that.
Okay.
Then based on the plan they picked, it would ask them the questions needed to create those documents. But then at the end, they wouldn't actually get the documents. They would pay, and then an attorney's going to follow up with you with 48 hours with the documents after reviewing and signing them. The attorney, we then created a back office for them so that the lawyers could take the same data, and this concept we've patented and still use today, take the same data that the consumer did. So you're using their efforts in the DIY process. Now, if I want to change their executor, or I want to add a new trustee, I'm just picking names from a drop down. All the consumers already put in their information about the people, the actors in their estate plan. So it's really easy for the attorney to answer a few questions, and out pops a custom tax motivated estate plan now. And these are advanced questions we wouldn't ask the consumer, but by having the consumer do 90% of the work and then the attorney do 10% of the work, we can provide a much lower cost, more efficient, and less error prone service. The American Bar Association recognized that. We grew it to 23 states. We're the largest estate planning firm in the country, just by number of states, at least at the time. No one thought we were going to win that award. That was one of those things where you just got to believe. I said, I think we have a shot at this. They emailed us and said we should apply. And it said you had to be in business for a year. You had to have this much money raised, none of which we had. And I literally faxed it in or scanned it in at midnight, the night it was due, after spending the whole day working on documentation and telling the story of the company and all that. And sure enough, we won. And that was the catalyst that set us off to the races to raise our first of $13 million from about 40 different shareholders back in Kentucky.
That's incredible. I love this. I love this story. So now going forward, we've got quite a lot of different plans that you're going to be doing. You're in 23 states already. Do you have plans to expand upon that as well?
Oh no, we're in 50 states. The law firm, yeah. I think I told you more details at the beginning than I've said now. So let me. We actually rolled that technology into a non-lawyer company, which is NetLaw. So NetLaw is not a law firm. It's in all 50 states. It's been in all 50 states for about 8 years. We've sold millions of dollars of estate plans in probably all the 50 states. I don't know if it's all of them, but we have documents available in all the states. We do not have lawyers available though, like we did when we began as a law firm.
Okay.
And the reason for that is we knew you needed a lawyer as an option, but we thought, well, we won't use the law firm that we just grew out of. We'll go get a network of attorneys. And getting a network of attorneys proved capital intensive, it's expensive and difficult because all these attorneys have their own ways of practicing. And to go in, at least when you're not delivering clients to them yet, because you're just trying to get your product off the ground and say, hey, will you join our network? Will you, practice this way with these clients? It's like, we grew a network of over 100 attorneys, but it was not cheap to get there. And we had products that went across consumers, attorneys, and financial advisors. So it's the way we market our product is through financial advisors who connect you to the estate planning solution. And it sort of got to sprawl. So we cut out the attorney part. We went pure DIY about 5 or 6 years ago, and have spent the last 4 years rebuilding all of our technology at a rather ambitious gamble I took a few years ago, with a very small engineering team to say, instead of improving the mousetrap we're selling now, let's completely rebuild it. Take everything we've learned. And I knew if we just kept improving the mousetrap we had then, it was sort of sprawling, and we would end up dying in a few years. But if I could stay alive long enough to get this new technology platform done, we knew we would make it. And it was not easy staying alive for 3 years. While it took us 3 years, we thought it was going to take one for this effort. But in the end, it was worth it. And we'll be bringing back attorneys, is where that meandering story was going. So we started with lawyers. We tried network attorneys as a non-lawyer company, so you could connect to a group. And then we went pure DIY. And what we'll be coming back full circle to in the fall is my father's firm is going to partner with us and offer attorneys in all 50 states. So you'll actually be able to go on from the comfort of your home, create your estate plan. You pay for it. You have chat right there that can be escalated to a video call like this with a paralegal who's like your client manager working under the direction of a lawyer. You're basically doing 90% of the work yourself. As you're done, you're getting draft documents, so you can go ahead and review and be ready to meet with the lawyer. And then you're going to meet with the lawyer. The lawyer's going to spend 30 minutes reviewing your matters, spend 30 minutes on a Zoom call with you, make any small changes that are included, or offer additional advanced services at an additional fee, and then ultimately execute the thing online. So you actually don't just get it done, you get it done and it's effective now.
Okay, that's amazing. So when you said that you decided to kind of rebuild the company, it sounds to me like you work a lot of your instincts, you work a lot of like, you just get that kind of inner knowing and guidance. Do you believe in intuition? Is that a thing
Sure.
for you?
I'd really say I switched my style of business. When I went to law school, I went from sort of right brain, more creative, if you bear the metaphor, to in law school where you've got to read hundreds of pages of really dense, dry material. It cuts off all the risk, the desire to take risk. When you go to law school, you see risk everywhere and you become very averse to it. And frankly, I didn't like the person after years of being that intensely focused and coffee and everything and nicotine, whatever, all the time. And so I reassessed years ago, and really it was meeting my wife, Angela, who came equipped with 2 children already, and one of whom I adopted, and we now have a child together. That really caused me to step back and reassess, like, I've been burning like this, I'm going to burn out. And I discovered a man named Vim Huff, who you may have heard of before.
Yeah.
And that man changed my life. I have done his method every day for a few years now. Went from not exercising to exercising all the time. And I've learned, instead of working 60-hour weeks, I can rely on my team. I can push problems to them. I remember saying years ago, guys, I have no clue how we're going to figure this out and get out of this, but I know if I just come tell you all what the problem is and what the stakes are, and just you all will figure it out. And sure enough, they are just, they do all the work. They've created a whole new brand for the company at NetLaw, and the real change has been moving from where I'm listening to my intuition on the strategic direction, and then I'm trusting my people to do their job. And it's a small team, but they're really, as Steve Jobs says, I'll take a small team of A players over a big team of B players any day.
Yes, I love that. I love the trusting of the team, because for me personally, in growing my brand, that has been my biggest challenge, of letting go of control and letting other people play in my sandpit, like coming in and letting them play with all the toys, and I just wanted to do it all myself. And then realizing that I came to this point where I realized, if I really wanted my company to grow bigger, it's ridiculous to expect myself to do it all. And yet I had to pry my little fingers off the controls, right?
You got it. That was my problem. I was spending 80 hours a week trying to do it all myself, and that wasn't working so well because I wasn't thinking as clearly. As if I spend more time taking care of myself, I spend more time when I'm really stressed out. I'll spend more time running than I will sitting at a computer doing actual work, because while I'm running, my brain's processing all this. And for me, my job's to make sure I have the right answer and direction. not to sit there and pound out 80 hours a week on a keyboard.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's the recognition, isn't it? When we recognize that the way we grow a bigger company we can't have the employee mentality.
You got it.
We can't be, like in that employee state. We have to start becoming the CEO and the boss.
And so much of that is self-improvement. So much of that I've found is as I improve myself, as I'm more disciplined, as I exercise, as I do my breathing every day, as I'm taking care and being a good father, I'm better at my job. And than I was when I was frantic and I was stressed out and I was angry and wondering why things aren't working. Because I've been on both sides, and I'll take a much more mindful lifestyle where I rely on my team and give myself plenty of time to think than the sort of frantic sprint pace that I started out with.
Yeah, and I think so many people start off in that frantic pace, and then something gives, something changes or something. For me, it was a massive burnout. I actually hit a burnout.
That was me.
And and it was not pretty.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then you realize you just can't keep going like that. But
Yep.
once you make the switch, you start to question if you were insane in the first half of your life, because you start to realize, like, oh my god, it actually gets to be easy. Oh my goodness, it gets to be spacious. It doesn't have
You're
to
so
be that
right.
your
Yeah.
nose has to be to that grindstone. And I think very much that's part of society's conditioning of us, that in order to make it in life, we have to have that nose to the grindstone.
Hmm.
And it's the only way to do it. But then, of course, once the people who are actually doing it are doing it, we realize, no,
Yeah.
you got to think in a different way. That's the key.
You're
You got to
exactly
start
right.
acting like a boss. I was working in my business, not on my business. Now I spend more time working on my business and letting my team work in my business, which is
Got it.
much easier to navigate. And of course, there's a lot more freedom in that as well. So I love that you've come to this realization as well. For you, you talked about mindfulness. Is mindset a huge part of, because you have a real, like, from this interview, I've really got an impression with you that you've got a real, like, I can do a mindset, like you see a problem, you think, okay, well, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but let me just jump in both feet first and try and come up with a solution here. Is this part of your mindset, would you say?
It has been for the last few years. Absolutely. That's what drives me. I mean, years. Uh, I have listened to more motivational YouTube videos on a regular basis, and it's not like any one video you go, oh, I realized something I didn't realize. Or I'm suddenly going to magically be rich because you listen to motivational tapes on YouTube. But just hearing every day. I mean, when I was at a point where very few, I think, believed in me. At various points throughout this company, people have had their doubts, particularly when it's been like 2.5 years and our development team's working on something nobody's seen yet. And it's like, guys, I know when this gets out, it's going to be great. And when it got out, the first partner we launched it with was SoFi, and that was huge for us. But that was 3 years of having to believe in my team and in something that people couldn't see. So I got to where listening to Impact Theory, there's a whole, I forgot his name, I'd say his name, but lots of different just motivational entrepreneur, and getting that message in my head and hearing the grind other people have been through, hearing where they've hit their nervous breakdown, their major. You'll find lots of people have that that are up at the high levels have had that point, and just hearing how they dealt with it and the determination and the drive. And then Wim Hof was big for me in that doing the breathing exercises in the morning, just 30 minutes. It changed everything for me. I got just sudden control over my nervous system. I feel like I had lost, or in the frenetic pace and just being stressed out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this every morning, I don't miss it religiously. And doing cold immersion, getting in. I
Yeah.
was living in Las Vegas at the time and had a pool, and in the winter it was very cold. It was like 45-degree temperature in the pool, and I would, to get control over my anxiety, I would get in that pool for about 5 to 10 minutes. I built up to that. and you breathe. I mean, your body, your initial reaction is get me out of here. This is danger. But you learn to overcome that initial fear. Same initial fear you get coming on a podcast right at the beginning. It's just like when I get in the cold water, that first sense of you breathe deep, and then and your body will naturally get better at putting you in a more calm state, even when you're in the middle of chaos, which cold water feels like chaos in the winter.
Yeah, definitely. I've got friends who do the Vim Huff method and have actually met him. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and he's really quite a character by all accounts. And I love it's about the mind over matter and taking the control, because for me, I think much of this, my own I can do philosophy in life, and trying things that maybe other people have not tried, and doing things, and even having the kind of gumption to take the idea of the $1 million experiment forward, and rolling out in the way that we did, that it is sometimes you gotta leap, right?
So how much longer do you have on the experiment?
So it finishes at the end of 2021. So it started on the 1st of January, and it's all the way through to the end of 2021. And so we've had our first data collection point was right at the beginning. Then we had our second data collection point. We have a 20-step plan in becoming a millionaire. We have one of our participants is one step away from hitting the $1 million. And
wow.
Then we have so far about 25% of our participants are on step 10, which is really impressive.
Wow.
So, but there's a lot of changes in people that we can't really measure. So they're like intangible changes. So we're trying to capture snapshots of them, of like how they're feeling, and, has their mind shifted? And there's lots of things that people are finding, that they realize that their self-belief has really risen during the, and this is something that you can't really, fully measure, but, hearing them say their self-belief has changed, hearing them say that they're way more mindful about their way that they talk about money in their minds now, because I think a lot of people with money quite often have a bit of a love-hate relationship, so they do love to have it, but they hate it when they don't have it, so it's the whole thing. And they've started realizing that they've changed their thought process around it. A lot of people are attracting and manifesting money into their lives, and lump sums of money are showing up, and things like that they wouldn't have had before, that they feel very much is attributed to the experiment. So it's really exciting to hear these stories as the data is starting to emerge. We have another data point in June, and then another one in Q4, and then our final data point is right at the end. So
okay, they report these results online?
Yeah, so we use an online survey tool to fill it all in, and
that's interesting.
But yeah, so it's been really, really interesting. It's part of, I'm hoping to use the results as part of my doctorate in metaphysical science.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated with the brain. I've always been fascinated with intuition. Part of it was because I'm one of these weird people that was born with my spiritual gifts switched on. So I was always really super intuitive and stuff. And so very early on, I had two choices. I either let the world think I'm crazy, or get really into science and show the world I'm not crazy.
That's great.
So I chose science. and then when I came across metaphysical science, which is the only science that studies beyond the physical world, it studies into, obviously we have physics that studies part of the quantum realm and the quantum world, but metaphysical science draws from all different disciplines. It draws from chemistry, biology, physics, then it draws from, in the world, metaphysics means it transcends the physical world. So it also draws from things like law of attraction, all your mindset teachers and things that you've heard on YouTube, like all the kind of concepts that they're talking about they're open for debate. Religious, theological ideas are also part of the science, which I really love. So
Like
it's
the study of everything.
it is literally, well, the way that I define, like, there's so many definitions. Like, if you go into Wiki, you'll get a definition for metaphysical science. And if you go into a dictionary, you'll get a slightly different one. My personal definition for metaphysical science is that it is the study of energy, and physics tells us energy is everything. So it is literally the study of everything, but the real study for me is the study of energy and how energy behaves and moves in our world and how it affects us. And that a lot of us are interacting on a quantum level with energy all the time. So for instance, the saying, you either can or you can't, it's, like whichever way you're wishing to believe, it's true. So if you think you can't do it, you're most likely right. And if you think that you can do it, you're most likely right. Well, that's your energy interacting on a quantum level. So if you but if you are willing to work on your mindset to believe that you can do things, you don't know how you're going to do them, but you're willing to take the leap first and let the road grow you to a person that can do that, you most likely will. But when we have this negative mindset of, oh, I can't do that, oh, I never went to school for that, oh, and we use those as our excuses, most likely we will never see the result that we had desired. Even if we desire the result, we won't see it. And so a big part of metaphysics for me is learning. It's exactly when you get in that swimming pool, that's metaphysics. Your body is hardwired to say, get out of the pool. And your mind says, no, we can conquer this. And that's tapping into the potentiality of your entire being, both in the physical form and in the non-physical form. So yeah, I love it. It's fascinating to me. So, but tell us a little bit more about where can people find you online. Obviously netlaw.com. Where can they give us that title of your book that you've written? Because I think there's maybe some parents that might be
I
listening to
believe
this and
it's
saying,
still for sale out there on Lulu.
right,
If you'd
okay.
like to email me for a copy, I'd be happy to get one. I'll have to dig it up, but I think I have PDFs of it still on my computer. Actually, the professor that Dr. Ann Wren that got me into the gifted program and sort of thereby changed my life, she wrote the foreword to the book. So she kind of told the story of meeting me, and then the book is sort of how I did what I was able to do with that catalyst that she provided. But yeah, reach out to me. And I'm also on Twitter, Hargrove NL. I have not been one to post meaningful content on there, frankly, but I have started writing in Google Docs, and I've got a Twitter going to post at least an initial thread of tweets on my Wim Huff experience soon. So if you'd be so kind, follow me on Twitter, and maybe you'll see something come out of me in the next few weeks.
I love it. I love it. The Wim Hof method it's exciting to go into that realms, and I'm glad that that's been something that's really helped you to move forward and to really conquer what you're doing, because we can bring these things into the business world. And for me, it's all about bringing in a more mindful way of doing business. I think the paradigm in this world is changing so much, and we can't be just in it for ourselves any longer. We've got to have this mindfulness of where we're in it for a collective if we're going to survive as a species, I feel.
Let's hope we do. Some days you never know, right?
It's touch and go some days, I think. But I think, I really believe in, when I look inside my communities, I always believe in the goodness of humans, because
I'm with you.
And I think you probably find with your own customers and things like that you have in clients that you see and you realize there is a lot of really good people out there.
Agree.
Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on the podcast. I've loved talking to you. It's really interesting to hear about a business that's very different from my online business, where it's all in the coaching world and everything. And I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to link all of your details below so that people can, below in the show notes, so that you can click on the links and go and check out Alex's business. And if you need a will, he is your man.
You got it. Joanna, thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
You are so welcome.